Salutations! I've always wanted to say that. Well, I hope you're doing well and that life is treating you right. I'm Ricky Levon, author of The Golden Image, and in this video, we're going to briefly, and I'm going to try to briefly give a quick snapshot on each of the short stories in this book. Now, every short story or every story is told either first person or at least from a singular person's point of view. There's a link in the description for more information on the characters and some of the other information, but of course, after hearing a little of each story, I hope you go out and get a copy of The Golden Image. Now, the first story is Prime Position, where the main character, Takashi, takes it upon himself to help those who are treated as lower class students. Also, in this story is a lot of background information on the city of Sheridan Falls, plus sets up a lot of the characters that you will get to know throughout the book. Now, in my hands is Myra's tale to her granddaughters about the importance of Thanksgiving and how it's better to help people. The story is told in a past perspective when Myra was in elementary school. Next up, Lucky. And I'm trying to say that in a question mark, so it's really Lucky? Yeah, it's a question, and it's about Felix, a college student who survives an almost impossible ordeal. It's funny because this was the original first story of the book that was changed later after it was clear that Prime Position should probably start the entire thing. Also, Lucky was actually an idea from many years before this book as a means of a story of telling something about overcoming an almost impossible situation through the Lord. The next story is Tatiana's Sacrifice, and it is told in the journal form of a student who at first seems to only think of herself. Then a tragedy happens, and it changes who she is and how she should handle a trial. Telling it in journal form was different but cool because it gives the book that extra bit of flavor so every single thing doesn't come across, same and boring. And then you have Jason Templeton, which is actually the name of that story. Now, what happens to him not only allows him to examine his life in school, but also sets the stage for something big in the last story of the book. And when reading this book, take special note to the characters because they play also a very important role in the finale. And then next up is Mystic Waters, which is told from Dr. Teresa Mokesha and how she befriended a missionary that not only affected her life but changed the lives of her community as well. And what's interesting about this story is she has a very special connection to one of the characters in the last story. Then you have The Power of One, and this is a unique tale of Mona and how she chose to follow her beliefs and not the pressures of the community. Now, this story is told in a very unique way in that it's an interview. Yeah, the entire story is told as an interview. So this means most of it is told in conversations between the reporter and the main character, Mona. After this you have And Then Came a Stranger, which is a story of a middle schooler wanting to make sure a change in school which causes a rift in her friendship. But as the title entails, something happens that affects her and causes changes as well to happen in her life. In this story, there are characters who showed up in other places, and one of them in particular is even a minor character in a previously mentioned story from earlier in this book. Now, next up is The Voice Within, which is actually based on the prophet Samuel, and the main character shares his name. Now, while at camp, Sam hears God speaks a special message to him, for which at first Sam is confused, but then makes a powerful decision to follow. Also, there is a secondary plot line, which is talked about later in the book. Really pay close attention to that as well. The next story is Intuition, which is told from Jack, and he's one of the few characters who's actually older while telling the story, but the main helper in the story is from someone that Jack and his crew least expected, and it is a young person. So also this story doesn't take place in Sheridan, like most of the other stories, but feature citizens from that city. Obsidian is the next story, and that one is told by Pastor Tyrone and how he comes face to face with evil. Not in the theoretical sense, but in a literal sense of evil. Now this story, like Intuition, is also told by an adult, but features a young person. And this was actually one of the hardest stories to write because there is a really dark nature to it. So I had to really tame it down considering it was for young people and the breadth and of all the other stories, and it had to kind of fit in. But it does feature a very special connection to many of the other stories if you pay close attention to some of the characters. And one of the other stories before your main one is Versus, which is a classic tale of David versus Goliath, where the main character, Carlisle, takes on a serious threat. It's interesting to see its connection with other stories in the book, and this story is closer to what I usually write, with action and thrilling moments, so I had to make sure to maneuver in a certain way so it fit. Like Obsidian, it's not that kind of dark, but it's just a different kind of a storytelling way, but it was cool. It's really, really enjoyable, and I really, really loved it. Then you come to the longest story in the entire book, which is The Golden Image, which of course the entire thing gets its name from. And as you can tell, it was inspired, at least the name of the entire book. Now, also, it features a new character by the name of Sherwood, but other people from the previous stories make their appearance in The Golden Image. It is not always the main characters from every single story. Sometimes a secondary character comes up, all of a sudden plays a very important role in The Golden Image. It might be surprised as to who you're going to see, and you might be surprised as to what issues they take and what they're doing. And it's really interesting to see what happens to certain characters and try to guess who they might be in the future. I mean, you'd be surprised if some people try to guess what happens to other characters that doesn't get mentioned and what type of choices would they make. So that was really, really a lot of fun, and writing a group of short stories like this was really entertaining and different for me. I'm hoping to maybe do stuff like that in the future, but of course we shall see. Anyway, thanks for your support, and I hope you enjoy the journey through Sheridan Falls and all the tales that lies within. Thanks, and be blessed.